Last but not least, James, let's talk about the biggest game of the weekend. Obviously, the top two from last season at the Emirates. A lot of back narrative to this with the Arteta Pep story, and then Arsenal's record against Man City has been awful for so long. When I saw the teams, I felt a bit underwhelmed for Arsenal. In the sense of having Jesus playing on the right, he's done it for City, but it did feel, well, from the lineups, because you don't know where people are going to play, but it felt a bit OOP. And that midfield of Odegaard, Jorginho, Rice, I mean, Odegaard would be the furthest forward, but it lacked a bit of creative spark or flair. It didn't excite me, it felt almost functional with that midfield. I didn't look at it and think they're going to have a lot of attacking threat here as Arsenal, because you're missing Saka, you're missing Martinelli, you're missing, I don't know if you'd say Havertz or another creative player. Vieira's been playing, hasn't he, ahead of Jorginho. Didn't feel exciting, if I'm honest with you. I can understand what City did with Bernardo Silva coming in instead of Doku, and then they need someone alongside Kovacic to try and solve the Rodri problem. If Rico Lewis was his plan, so be it. Rico Lewis
played fine.
Kovacic, on the other hand, should have gone.
100%.
Should have gone. Studs up.
By the way, for me, the first challenge is a red card.
On Rice?
Yeah. No, on Odegaard, wasn't it?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
The first one on Odegaard, that's a red card in itself.
I thought I was talking about the one on Rice. That was...
Well, the second one is not a red card, but it's definitely another yellow. I don't know how he's got away with
it. It's disappointing, to be honest with you, when they're so obvious.
You know what it felt like to me, if I'm being honest? It felt like... we don't want another 10 versus 11 game here. Like almost a preset decision.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, it was low XG and neither of them got over half a goal XG.
The thing is, though, and here's interesting. So we say this a lot, right? I ruined the game. We kind of said it about Tottenham-Liverpool last week. You know, you ruined the game in terms of what we wanted it to be. But I don't know, 11 versus 10 might have been more interesting than what I did watch yesterday. Because to be honest, and it's not a criticism of either team, I just think it wasn't quite what we expected. And partly because I think, by the way, I think both teams were outstanding defensively. Rather than it was boring. Both teams defensively were just brilliant. And I mean collectively in terms of particularly the centre-backs, actually. Like Diaz, Ake, I know the goal comes off Ake, but Saliba, Gabriel, particularly those four, were probably, in my opinion, just about the four best players on the pitch, actually. Centre-backs were completely dominant in this game. So, you know, that speaks a lot in terms of what we saw. But yeah, would it have been a worse spectacle if it had been 11 v 10? Maybe it would have been a lot better. Might have been. I think like the 10, you could feel, I don't know if Arsenal fans might disagree with this, or you might disagree with this, but it felt like watching them was a real tension in the atmosphere. It didn't feel like, and I think that's because of how the game was. I was surprised that Arsenal pressed fine, but they did it much better against Tottenham. And I don't know if there was a concern about personnel, which is why that they didn't do it in the same way. And obviously City is more difficult to press because it's so good at obviously controlling the football match and killing you. But it reminded me more of the game Arsenal actually had against Manchester United in game week 4, where we spoke about this kind of cat and mouse thing when neither team particularly wanted to go and press the other one. This wasn't as amplified in that way, but I thought both were hesitant. And you can understand that, right? These games are defined so often by one individual error or one person not tracking a run or Tomiyasu ending up going forward from left back and taking Phil Foden with him and then a deflection. Ultimately, that's what's decided the game. I think there were cute things tactically, like even with the substitutions. Obviously, City brought Doku on as one of a number of changes and originally put him on the right, which ironically I think was the kid Arteta to take Zinchenko off, because as soon as he took Zinchenko off, he moved Doku to the left-hand side, and I think that was part of City's plan. So that the two of them, when they play each other, and we've seen this even long before Arsenal become kind of good under Arteta, was Arteta would go to the Etihad and he'd play like an Odegaard as a false 9 and do things you weren't expecting. They're always trying to one-up each other tactically and stuff. But I think largely both teams kind of countered each other. And I think that it happened because they're both at such a tight level, a top level. It felt a bit like, so it felt almost like an FA Cup final that often doesn't live up to the expectations of what a game's going to be, and the importance is too much that both teams just end up defending really well because of the occasion, and it ends up getting settled by one moment. I think particularly Arsenal defensively were very good, especially because in the first sort of 5-10 minutes, City had a couple of openings, that kind of double effort with the one that I think Rice cleared off the line from Aki from memory. Or it was Aki had the second really good chance. Someone else had the original effort that was cleared off the line, I think. And you thought, and Gary Neville was doing his usual on commentary where he has to pick something out of the narrative and then doesn't forget about it for the rest of the game. This week's target was David Raya. And his nerves and stuff, but David Raya, I think his distribution in the game actually was outstanding for Arsenal and was giving City a real problem because he really can go 50-60 yards into a wide forward like Jesus, and did that a couple of times actually. And I don't know why he was making such a big deal about the nerves. There was nervousness through the whole team. That's what I said. It led to like the atmosphere issues and stuff. So if you've gone early on David Raya, like don't be worried about what Gary Neville said. Be more worried about what Arteta does, and he just I might just throw Ramsdale in for a game. But we think Raya's going to be first choice now.
Gap felt a bit closer between the two of them, I would say, and the gap between Arsenal and City in terms of the back end of last season, City schooled them a couple of times, and they really in both the defeats.
To be honest, now in the game at the Emirates. Arsenal made mistakes, right? Tomiyasu did a back pass and put De Bruyne through for 1-0. And then I think they lost a turnover for Grealish's second goal, and Ramsdale should arguably save that. So in the game at the Emirates last year, Arsenal didn't play badly at all. In the game at the Etihad, they got scored massively badly,
I mean, both sides are missing a number of key players.
The key difference is, so City very much played a 4-4-2 that night in April. Last night wasn't. They defended in a 4-4-2 with Lewis joining Haaland in the first line of defence, and then Pep played Alvarez on the right and Foden on the left. I didn't like it, and I don't think most neutrals, I don't think most City fans would have liked that. He was obviously trying something a little bit different tactically, which I think was to try and get near what they created in April. We're talking about Lewis versus De Bruyne now, and this one, because Alvarez has been playing so well, De Bruyne's not felt like a miss. But everything felt quite far away from Haaland to link. So yesterday was the first game it really looked like you looked at the game for, if De Bruyne was here, this would feel a little bit different, I think. And like I said, Arsenal wasn't at full strength either. Obviously, they can win a game of football without Bukayo Saka. Maybe you'll get the odd rest now. I think Martinelli coming back is a really, really interesting differential as quickly as game week 10. Just check he's got obviously his fitness and fine from game week 9 and the Champions League game that follows after that. But I'm Sheffield United game week 10. Martinelli, I'd be very, very, very interested in that, Suj.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's why I've started the season with him and potentially Saka.
It's definitely Gabriel over Saliba now at this stage, I think.
Yep.
And the other City player I'd really keep my eye on quite quickly as well is John Stones.
He was back on the bench the other day, wasn't he? And then
he came on. Guardiola said it was really strange because he was named as a substitute in Leipzig,
but he said he wasn't ready.
And Guardiola said he's not ready to play for us, but he might be ready for the national team. And I thought it was a bit strange. As soon as Rodri got suspended, I'd said on our City Slack channel, I think Guardiola will try and do everything to get John Stones ready for that game. I know one of our City fans, FPL Roberto, had said that there was no way that he'd probably be ready and Guardiola wouldn't risk him, and that proved absolutely to be correct. But I think John Stones will get back in that team. And obviously, if you've got different City coverage, you should be conscious of that. There's no doubt for me that John Stones will be part of a best Manchester City team. The international break allows a facility for them to begin to build it back. I don't think he probably doesn't start against Brighton if he plays twice for England. But England will help, ironically, get his fitness back up. So John Stones should be a consciousness for people who've got City ownership, and I think him as a potential asset should be of interest. Remember, prior to game week 1, a lot of us wanted to go there because of what he can be positioning, and he will facilitate City to be able to change. You think the way City played at the back end of last season with John Stones stepping out into midfield with Rodri and neither of them two being available yesterday, I know he's played the end of the game. It's big. It's big for City. Someone asked me on Sunday morning and said he couldn't understand why I tipped Arsenal to win. Is Rodri's absence that big? And I said yes.
Yeah. I mean, if he picks up an injury this season for a prolonged period of time, the favouritism for the title swings to Arsenal so quickly.
I don't quite know about that because, if you reflect on City and say
they've just lost to Wolves and Arsenal.
If you reflect on the City team that played at Tottenham in February, I'd have looked and went, this is the easiest we've ever had against City. That was in February. They won a treble less than 4 months later. So he found different solutions. At that point, he was experimenting with Lewis as inverted left back.
And Rodri got suspended and they've lost 3 games in a row without him.
Yes, but Rodri's back.
Which is crazy.
Rodri's back now. So
I get that.
Such a
it's
huge
as if he's injured
for
a period of time. But the correlation between, Man City losing 3 games in a row ever in the last sort of 4 or 5. It's in the league. It hasn't happened since 2018. So for them to lose all 3 games without Rodri says a lot.
Yes, which of course, it means if they had a long-term absence, but it might be that he got an absence in the future, so maybe they could play John Stones there, and it might not be so bad. Clearly, he doesn't want to use Calvin Phillips. Like if he was going to do it, it would have been over this period. Yep. He obviously didn't want to start Matthias Nunes yesterday. Kovacic was dirt lucky, as obviously covered not to get sent off, and therefore the only other one he's got real trust for in there at the moment is Silva.